Welcome back to the eighth episode of the Strategy Edge podcast, where each episode in this particular season is a strategic journey with Christopher Roberts, brand interventionist, net promoter score expert, and author of 10 Reasons Why CX NPS Programs Fail. In our last session, which is episode 7, we unravel the intricacies of turning your brand strategy into a powerful force on the force of your staff. Today, we're diving deeper into the heart of customer experience and Net Promoter Score strategies. Building upon our previous discussion, where Chris emphasized the strategic significance of your brand, in this particular episode, he will unveil the pitfalls of a fuzzy CX NPS strategy. As we dissect the consequences of solely focusing on customer satisfaction, Chris, it'll be great if you can shed light on the concept of the CX DNA and how it forms the essence of a truly impactful customer experience. So, to our listeners out there, stay tuned as we explore these critical elements of your CX DNA, how to identify and prioritize them, and of course, the key role of internal alignment with staff engagement in delivering exceptional customer experiences. Your brand success is intertwined with your ability to create a distinct CX DNA. So, let's unravel this mystery with Chris. Welcome back, Chris, to episode 8.
Thank you, Keithana.
Chris, to begin with, what are the potential consequences of solely focusing on customer satisfaction as a performance metric?
Look, the fundamental issue with customer satisfaction is this that in this day and age, if you're just satisfying your customers, that's just basic hygiene. I mean, what are you going to say? Like, oh, look, we don't want to do this customer satisfaction thing. You have to at least do that in this day and age, right? But the real question is it going to give you a competitive advantage? Is it going to make you stand out in comparison to your competitors? Is it going to get people to be loyal to you, recommend you to other people, etc., etc.? So when you look at customer satisfaction, you have to look at it as this is par for the course. It's basic hygiene. We have to do this. But if we really want to make a difference and if you want to really stand out in the marketplace, then the mindset you need to have is what are the experiences and propositions that will make people stay with us? So, in other words, be loyal, right?
Right.
Say good things about us, which means recommend us to other people and select us to begin with. And more nowadays, products are pretty much the same. There's a sea of sameness out there. So anything you can do to really stand out is what you should aim for. And to me,
Right.
satisfaction, I'm not saying don't do satisfaction. You have to at least do that. But actually, you need to aim higher.
Right. So I have heard you in the past talking about a CX DNA. Can you explain this concept in greater detail to our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So I hear that a lot. When you look at CX, which of course stands for customer experience, if you go to people and say, what makes a good experience? It could be 40 different things. The people are friendly, they're reliable, they're responsive, they pick up the phone quickly, the staff are knowledgeable, etc., etc., etc. But the real essential aspect is what is your CX DNA? So when people deal with you, how is your DNA different to other people? So first of all, let me just explain what a CX DNA is. And I should mention this that, I learned about this many, many years ago from a book written by Colin Shaw and John Ivins around this whole concept of a CX DNA. The whole concept is kind of like when people talk about customer service, they focus on the functional aspects. So, how responsive are they? How reliable are they? How quickly do they pick up the phone? How knowledgeable are the staff? And what I learned after reading this book was that the functional aspects are important, no doubt, but the emotional aspects are even more important, which is like,
Right.
how do people make you feel? Do they make you feel supported and valued and cared for and reassured, as an example? Those are the things that make all the difference. And do you feel impressed after you deal with them? So when you look at your CX DNA, another thing comes up. So you say we want to improve service. So that means you have to improve 40 different things because good service can mean 40 different things. Now, our approach is you need to actually create a CX DNA statement. And that statement has three or four functional elements, like timely, reliable, knowledgeable, etc., etc. And then you have your emotional elements, which is how you want people to feel after an interaction. So you want them to feel valued, you want them to feel cared for, you want them to feel supported, you want them to feel impressed, you want them to feel reassured, etc., right? And once you have this statement of just, three functional, three emotional, typically, now the issue becomes, hey, Chris, but what about the other 36 things that are there, or 34 things that are there, right? And that's where the halo effect comes in. Because if you do these few things exceptionally well, right, then it creates a halo effect and everything else gets rated highly. You know, so
Right.
for example, if you actually take time to understand a customer's needs, then they will automatically feel valued and cared for. You know, if you're proactive, as an example, they're going to see you as a strategic partner. So you do a few things well, execute them well, and you will get high ratings across the board. You obviously can't focus on 40 things, but you can focus on six, right?
Right.
And these six things, they need to be obviously planned with your CX statement, say this is it. But it's not enough to just have a statement, right? You then need to measure it and say, okay, how are we going? We say we want our customers to feel valued. Do they really feel valued? And then beyond that, if they don't feel valued, then you need to get teams together to say, okay, let's ideate in terms of how we can make people feel more valued, right?
Right.
So that's the essence of what a CX DNA is, and this is how you do it.
Absolutely. And basically, these end up becoming like the core part of what you are as a brand, right?
Correct.
How do you think businesses can effectively identify and prioritize these key functional and emotional elements that form this unique customer experience DNA that they're trying to build?
So this is how we do it. We organize a workshop, and that's where we workshop the statement. Correct. The main thing is who is actually present at the workshop. So we typically get all the functional heads of customer facing units like sales, service, marketing, supply chain, etc. Correct. And then, in addition to the functional heads, we make sure that there is a sprinkling of frontline staff. And there's certain criteria around that. They have to be staff who are very customer centric and customer focused and positive, right? You don't want people in there who have a soapbox issue that they're going to bring up as a way to get it through.
Right.
So that's the first thing in terms of composition. The second thing is when we workshop what those things are, we have a basic criteria that says, the stuff you come up with, whether it's functional or emotional, is it going to make someone select you over other alternatives? Is it going to make them recommend you to other people? And is it going to make them more loyal? Right. And that's the key criteria in terms of this. And then the last thing is when you look at this customer experience statement, you need to make sure that it's not motherhoody. What I mean by that is people will come up with words like, we want to increase trust.
Mhm.
We want to build better relationships with people. And you go, well, trust I have a bit of an issue with, I'll tell you, because trust has character implications and it has, competency implications as well, right? So, as an example, I trust my mother implicitly, but if I needed brain surgery, she wouldn't be the one I would get to do it, correct? Because though I trust her character, she's not competent in this particular aspect. And it's the same with anyone, right? You look at someone, you say, I trust, and that could be you trust them to do a good job, or it could be I trust that they have good integrity and character and will do the right thing and so on and so forth. So no
Right.
motherhoody kind of statement. So the actual elements have to be able to be measured, managed, and ideated against. So in other words, they need to be actionable. They need to be something you can put your arm around and say, we can do this. Yeah.
Right.
So that's how we typically do it. Yeah.
So that was a very interesting example, Chris, and something that people can very easily relate to. So, given that, how do you think an organization can ensure a consistent delivery of their CX DNA?
So the whole thing is, when you come up with a strategy, it's just words, right? And you can put it in your annual report and you can put it on your website, but it's just words, right? So the first thing you have to do is, once you develop the strategy or the customer experience DNA, you go to your staff and you say, and ideally bottom up is great. So you go to bottom up teams like service teams, sales teams, supply chain teams, marketing teams, and you say, okay, all right, how do we deliver this? Correct. Now, once you run these ideation sessions, they come up with ways to deliver against each word or element in your customer experience DNA, and you get all these ideas, right? So, for example, let's just say one of the words is cared for, and you say, how can we as a team deliver cared for? Correct. Now, in these ideation sessions, we train frontline managers on how to facilitate these sessions so that they do it themselves and they get all these ideas coming through. So that's the first thing. Once they develop the ideas, then the next thing is to measure it. So we developed this XYZ initiative to make people feel cared for. Do they really feel cared for? Right? And if they don't, why don't they feel cared for? And what can we do about it? So once you get people involved in the whole process, that means you convert your words into specific actions. That's when the rubber truly hits the road. And then you measure it. And then once you measure it, you do one of two things. You either take corrective action, correct? It's not working, let's try something else, or
Right.
you share best practice. So you might find, as an example, there are some teams that really come across really good in terms of making customers feel valued. Other teams might come across as being really proactive. Not just teams, it might be one individual. So we had this client recently where it was like a wholesaler type business, but one particular service agent had really high scores. And if you went to the crux of this situation, she was very proactive in her dealing with customers. She didn't wait for something to happen. She went out there and did it. Now, once we know this, you can share best practice. So
Right.
my view is every brand knows how to create promoters. They know how to make people feel valued, cared for. Now, the trick is find out what you already do well and then share best practice.
So, Chris, can you kind of take us through another aspect about customer strategy, which is about the delivery of the unique value proposition of a brand?
Yeah, absolutely. This is really funny. The first step is to actually have one, right? So I can't even begin to tell you. This is literally 8 times out of 10. Okay. So I've run many customer strategy workshops. And before the customer strategy workshop, I go to the most senior person, and in some cases, the CEO, and I go, so what's your value proposition? And they go, what do you mean? That's the first question. So I go, why should someone select you over other alternatives in your market? Why should they recommend you to other people and why should they be loyal? Right?
Right.
Typically the responses I get is because we have high quality products and services. So I said, how do you know that? Oh, I think we do. So are you sure? Are you better than your competitors? Not sure. Right? Okay. So then when I drill a little bit further, I go, no, come on, there has to be more, right? Like, what's your unique value proposition? Like, these are your other competitors, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. What makes you truly stand out? Then they typically come up with a line, our people make the difference, right? And I go, how do you know that, right? And they go, we're not sure, but I think then they'll throw experience at me. I've been in this business for so many years and I know that is the case. But the fundamental issue is they don't have a value proposition, correct? So the first thing is to actually develop a customer value proposition. And when I
Right.
say develop, so I'll tell you again how we do it. So we have a facilitated workshop. Again, we have senior people in there, from frontline facing places like marketing, sales, service, etc., etc. We typically have the CEO there as well, another senior executive. And when we do that, we go through a very structured process of distilling out what the customer value proposition is. And we start off by what are customers really looking for? Step one. Step two is, what are the competitor offerings out there? Like, who are the competitors and what do they offer? Correct. The third thing is, what are the unique features and benefits that this brand offers? What is unique about it? That's a hard thing to answer because most times people struggle. Now, the point to make is, in a customer value proposition, it's not a tagline. So it's not Nike's just do it, right? A customer value proposition is not like a short, elegant little line. A customer value proposition can be quite clunky, but it has to be correct. Okay. So a customer value proposition includes points of parity that are required in that category anyway. So let's just say, as an example, if you're in a market to sell mobile phones, so having a good camera is a point of parity. But then you have a point of difference, and that point of difference might be, superior design, superior speed. Samsung has this foldable phone as an example, right? So you have all
Right.
those things. So it's a combination of points of parity and points of difference in one, right? The focus is not just on just a unique selling proposition. So it's really the answer to the question, why should I select you over other alternatives? Why should I be loyal to you? And why should I recommend you to other people? And obviously, it has to be relevant. So it has to be something that says, this is what the customer actually wants. Yeah. No point having a value proposition that the customer doesn't want. It might be unique, but no one wants it.
Right.
Um, Now, the next aspect of this is also critical. And this is about infusing your customer value proposition with your purpose beyond economics, which is like, what's your purpose? What are you really trying to do? Right? What's your why? Right? Like, why do you exist? Besides making money. Now, once you infuse this, you have a value proposition which is unique, that includes the category core requirements, includes your points of difference, and includes your purpose beyond economics. And once you actually have that, you have something that is really powerful. Now that you have a value proposition, the next thing is to measure it and to manage it. Correct? You measure it via your, very tailored customer surveys, and you understand whether you're delivering it or not. The acid test, of course, is very much around, with this customer value proposition, if you deliver it, not just if you talk about it, but if you deliver it, will it result in people selecting you over others? Will it result in them saying good things about you, like referring you to other people? And will it result in them being loyal to you, so staying? And if the answer is yes, then you start measuring it and then you start managing it. So if it's not performing well, then you need to address it. Now, how do you address it? Now, sometimes you might have to fix reality. Like, let's just say, as an example, people say, oh, your delivery takes too long. So you say, okay, it takes 7 days to get delivery, right? Okay. So then you might say, okay, let's do some process improvement so that you get delivery in 5 days, as an example, correct? But sometimes it might just be about managing perception, and not reality, because sometimes fixing reality is very expensive, right? I remember in the old days when Amazon used to only sell books and I used to buy books from them, they used to always say the book is coming in 7 days, right? But it used to always show up in 5 days. So you automatically felt good about it because they were managing perception, not reality. If they
Right.
actually reduced that delivery, it would have cost them a lot of money. Eventually, they reduced it anyway, but I'm just saying, it costs a lot of money. Now, we had a client recently where there was a real concern that supply chain was not very good. There were too many out of stocks. There were too many this, too many that, and but the reality was they had stats to prove otherwise. So that's another way to affect actual perceptions out there. So they started sharing. This is our out of stock situation at the moment. This is our delivery schedules, et cetera, et cetera. And as soon as that went out, then people go, oh, gee, these people are pretty good. Maybe I'm the one who had a bad experience.
Right.
So that's what you need to do.
So, Chris, in episode 7, you had kind of briefly touched upon the involvement of staff. So, what role does internal alignment and staff engagement play in delivering exceptional customer experiences? And how, personally, do you think leaders can ensure their teams are fully committed to the goal of delighting customers?
Yeah, so I think in the last episode we covered things like, without involvement, there's no commitment, and so on and so forth. And that people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. They want to contribute to strategy.
Right.
Um, and they don't want to just sell widgets, they want a purpose beyond economics. But the other aspect is I explained that the customer experience DNA is not just about functional aspects, it's about emotional aspects, how you make people feel. Now, the thing about how
Right.
you make people feel is, so let's just say you say you want all your customers to feel valued and cared for. Now, it's not going to happen if your staff who are delivering the service don't feel valued and cared for, because the emotion needs to be transferred. If they don't feel it, they're not going to make other people feel it, right? The second part in terms of alignment is people like to see a line of sight. And I covered this in a previous podcast where people don't want like an overall, head office brand score and it's fuzzy in terms of what their contribution is. You need insights at a granular level. So you have a clear line of sight. Our team did this and we achieved this, and this is how we contributed to this. So that's it. And the last thing I suppose is that staff have a strong need for contribution, right? To something, a cause, and linking it to them and meeting that need for contribution, I think is critical. But fundamentally, if you think about it, right, if you want to go beyond just satisfaction, which is where we started in this podcast, and if you want to have experiences that have true emotional resonance, then the people who deliver that are your staff. You've got to make sure that works.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. And that concludes another very insightful episode of the Strategy Edge podcast with you. Today, we've navigated through the dangers of a fuzzy CX NPS strategy in this episode, and we've discovered the vital role of having a CX DNA. So, as we strive for CX excellence, internal engagement and staff engagement do emerge as the bridge to delivering exceptional customer experiences. Um, Moving forward, don't miss out on episode 9, where we will be delving into the critical issue of CX being treated like a hobby and not a core aspect of the business. It's a topic that resonates with many businesses, and I'm sure, Chris, you will share your expertise on transforming CX from a side project to a core business function. Tune in for more strategic insights that can reshape your approach to customer experience. And the Strategy Edge podcast is here where strategy meets excellence. Thank you, Chris, once again.
Thank you, Keithana.